We're going to move on to the third and final presenters for today's session, the health and wellbeing. So I'm going to take this moment to introduce James Townsend and Suzanne Bourne to the group. James co-founded Mobilise in March 2019 after navigating the complexities of caring life within his own family. He's previously worked in education, building a professional development network for thousands of head teachers across the UK. And Susan Bourne is co-founder and head of Carer Support. She heads up the Carer Support service, provides one-to-one and group coaching, online couples, and an online peer support community, as well as overseeing a suite of digital tools. So with that, I want to introduce both James and Suzanne to the conference. Thank you, guys.
Good morning, Matthew, and hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. And thank you very much for some fantastic presentations. I was just thinking, I don't know about you, Suzanne, really validating to hear that other people have had some of the same challenges that we've had and learned similar lessons. So thank you for sharing them. Now, we're dialing in from the UK this morning, and I have a favour to ask, because we've taken a decision to get up very early to run this session live, because we would really, really love to have a vibrant conversation with you. Now, we've only got a little bit of time, so we'd like to rattle through some slides. But as we're doing so, please bring any questions you have, comments, whatever thoughts you have while we're going through, because we'd love to have that chat, 10 minutes of chat just at the end of the session, to really hear what other people are experiencing with some of these things. Right, Suzanne, shall we get going?
Absolutely. I'm loving that on screen I'm taller than you. This is fabulous.
It's the first time that's happened.
Not real though.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matthew. Shall we move through to the next slide? So we'd like to share with you some of what we've learned over the last 18 months while we've been reaching 100,000 carers. So you've already met Suzanne and me, and Mobilise is an organisation. We work with local government health authorities and existing carer organisations in places. So we are actually quite a place-based organisation, even though we're online. And we aim to reach and support carers at scale. Scale is really important for us. We want to be able to reach as many as possible and really move from maybe 10 to 15% of carers reaching support to making that more like 85%. And in order to do that, we want to do that really early in the caring journey. So Matthew, if we can move on, please. Now, so we're going to rattle through just a couple of kind of key themes here. And the first one I want to mention is how we literally reach carers online. And the reason that I think that's in the health and wellbeing stream is that in order to get that support for carers' health and wellbeing, we have to have a conversation with carers in the first place. So making sure that that works at scale is really important. And there are three things that we found really effective to do that. The first one, counterintuitively perhaps, is active listening. So really using various tools around the internet to be listening to what the key things are for carers. Now, this was particularly true during lockdown as a situation was developing day by day. But I think it's true more generally to really get a sense of what is on the button and a live issue for carers, and then use that to create 5-star content, really, really valuable tips, tricks, advice, information that can reflect back in a really supportive and empowering way. So that's number one. Number two is digital marketing tools. And that's where, so we've got a team, really sophisticated people drawn from the commercial sector in all sorts of ways, who know what they're doing. And I've learned this, it's a bit of a science, to use that group of carers that we're already talking to and tell the internet to go out and find people who look a bit like them, who share similar characteristics and who are therefore likely to be carers. Then finally, and this might be counterintuitive again for we are an optimistic and upbeat organization, but we very much work around problem-based service entry points. That might sound a bit like jargon. It basically means we recognize that carers very rarely wake up in the morning and say, oh, you know what I need? I need a self-care workshop. What they might say is, I'm really struggling with X or Y, and we can then bring them some really effective tools like the one that we've just been listening to. Suzanne, do you want to take on the next slide?
Certainly. So one thing we really noticed when the pandemic hit is lots of organisations had to really quickly jump from face-to-face services. In the UK, we're quite small. There's not a large distance between a lot of organisations. So a lot of stuff was already being delivered face-to-face. And jumping into that tech space was a big shift. And at first there was a bit of, hang on, this isn't working. Tech's not okay. We don't like online. And for us, we've been working online for a while, delivering peer support and other things through different mediums. So we'd had the experience of having got it wrong before and some learning to use. So one of the first things was about choosing the right tech. So for us, we were comfortable with Zoom. It's what worked for us. We find that gets a much more natural conversation. And quite often people have used Teams in a corporate setting, and so enter into a kind of a corporate style conversation, and they're putting their hand up to have their contribution rather than there being a natural conversation flow. So Zoom worked well for us, we found, but it's about exploring what works well for you and the thing that you're delivering. Making things super easy to join. That was another big thing for us about Zoom, that it was people could really easily access it on all the devices, and it was kind of working very smoothly at the beginning of the pandemic and has done since. And, just that we're not making elaborate sign-up procedures and different things that people need to give us lots of data about. Just click and join. Come in and, share your email address, where you are, and come and join us. So all of our, what we call our cuppers, they're very like a light conversation to start with. And they're, people can just join whenever they like. They're every day and they can just come along. So they don't all have like a series of 6 weeks and things like that to commit to. It's just come along and say hi. And the asynchronous conversation is about, well, not everyone can join at a particular time of day. We need to offer choice of different options. We need to meet people where they are, where they're already having community and chat. So for us, that was a simple private Facebook group. And it's about being able to ask a question at any time of night or day and have other carers tell you what they've learned, share their wisdom, share their knowledge. So those are the kind of things that are working for us with the tech. The approach needs to be slightly different from what you're doing in a face-to-face setting. You can use all of that learning, but there's some tweaks that are needed when you're doing face-to-face. And it's really important to focus on section 3, which is the outcome as you're doing that. What are you trying to achieve? So for us, it was really important that the rules of engagement are clear, whether it's the rules in the Facebook group, whether it's the welcome you receive in our cuppers, that people are really clear about what this space is for, the tone of the space, what's okay and what's not okay. Online, we learn, you're right there, as the presenter in a couple of presentations ago said, we're right there in their homes. Last night, I got to meet someone's ferret. I think that was the first on the Zoom call for me. So we're meeting their pets. They've got their favourite mug with them. We can see their backgrounds. So they're quite comfortable and at home. And just this kind of anonymity of the online space sometimes does create, people are more willing to share, more willing to go deeper. So there's a real arc of intensity to a conversation. So it's really important that we don't leave it in this deep, high, complex emotional place, that there's this sense of uplift at the end where someone has a space to just land. So in face-to-face situations, we'd be there as they're putting their coats on, we'd be having that final chat. There'd be a chance for a one-to-one conversation if someone was feeling particularly emotional about things. Whereas online, we don't have that opportunity. We do offer follow-up one-to-one calls, but there's just not that natural space. So we really make sure we land people well, and we call it uplift. It's not always positive, but it's just that let's come up to a nice place to leave things. So it might just be thinking about what comes next. It might be thinking about something fun, but just taking that conversation up very naturally up to that place. But people are aware we're going to do that, so it doesn't come as a surprise at the end. And just recognizing people are connecting with each other and giving them different places to do that. That's one of the key sort of outcomes really that's come from the approach, that they're making those connections and then able to continue those connections online themselves. Some people have met face to face, and there's a big bus going around the UK, so all these people can meet each other at some point. The outcomes is really important. Lots of events. So we've seen events, things like, a cooking lesson or a baking lesson. Fantastic. People have delivered the products and they've had a baking lesson. And if the outcome that you were trying to achieve was that people made a great cake or learned some cooking skills, then that's absolutely great. But if the outcome we're trying to achieve is actually some group learning and those connections, then we need to think about the structure of that setting. Is it just going to be us delivering to the carers, or does there need to be more engagement and involvement and things around the activity, time and space around the activity, so carers can meet each other? So really important to think about the purpose and the outcome that you're heading for when you're planning the session. James, back to you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And do please, I've seen some questions coming in already, so please do keep them coming in as we're going along. Matthew, let's crack on to the next slide, please. So what I'd like to share with you just very briefly, we've mocked up some responses and I've put them in context for one of the boroughs that we've been working with. So this is actually different data, but I think it's really valuable to see carer behaviors. And one of the great things about going online is that we can get some data, not in terms of people's email addresses and so on, but actually data in terms of how people are engaging. And you'll see there that device type is really, really important. And I would hazard a guess that most of us on this call, on the whole, engage with online stuff through desktops. And in that sense, we're weird. And because most of the carers who are engaging with Mobilise at the moment are doing so online, they're on their smartphone. We have a rule that you should be able to engage with any of our services either while watching X Factor or sitting on the bus. Okay, so I think that's a really striking thing, and we need to be designing services for that need with mobile-friendly things in mind. Next one, please, Matthew. Second, really interesting age breakdown. So you can see here that the profile of folk is much younger than would be traditionally accessing services. Now, there's a question there about whether there's a group of older people who might be being excluded, or it might be that actually traditionally this group of people who are younger carers have been excluded from traditional services. Now, I'm not going to propose any answer to that, but really helpful data to indicate there's a huge number of people who do exist who are much younger than are traditionally engaging with services. Next slide, please, Matthew. Now, this is actually two of my favorite here. One is that men have been overrepresented in our in the 100,000 that we've reached. We've got some theories on that, which is to do with kind of anonymity and not having to show your face, basically, on all of our services. We think that that has a big impact for men. But my absolute favorite stat is that 70% of carers are coming to us outside working hours. That means evenings, very early in the morning, or at weekends. And we've got a theory. We don't know what it is, but we've got a theory that people might get up in the middle of the night to take someone to the loo or turn them or whatever it might be, and then can't get back to sleep and have something playing on their mind. And of course, that's a really valuable moment to catch them and to provide some support. So the question is, what impact does that have for the services that we design if 70% of people are coming outside working hours? I'm going to pose that as a question. Next slide, please, Matthew. And I think it's back to Suzanne.
Yeah, so research has been really important in everything we did. We know we're kind of stepping into new territory, and it was really important to make sure we had an evidence share this with other people as we learn. So first of all, in designing the service, we'd look at existing evidence, particularly things around what helps with carer resilience and gaining those behavioural insights about how do people act online, looking at things like nudge theory, how do we take people on a journey. So really important to do that initial research using what's already there and learning what we already know about how people behave. And then we work with partners at University of Liverpool and University of Bristol to review what we're doing and take a kind of external view of the work we're doing. So 2 reports came out. One was all about our cuppers at the beginning of lockdown, and was really great, showing how carers were building resilience through community and through learning from each other. And then the lessons from lockdown was all about the whole kind of digital picture that's happening across the country at the moment, but also across the world, how people are shifting services. And what did carers think of that? What did carers commissioners think about that? What did carer support organisations think about that? And what was the kind of evidence and experience? So that was a great piece of research and has really helped to sort of drive us forward and focus the work that we're doing going forward. No, digital is definitely a thing. We're not all returning to face-to-face services.
Next slide, please, Matthew. Okay, share some really about the cost-effective approaches for achieving this kind of thing. When we're talking about reaching 100,000 carers, that's a huge number, right? And it could potentially be very expensive if we're doing it through traditional means. So what are the ways in which technology can help us do that? Well, the first thing is to mobilize the community. And that's very much where we get our name from, looking at how we can mobilize the wealth of expertise, knowledge, and experience that sits within the community, other people who've been there before and who know what it's like. And that's not just passing the buck and getting the carers to do the work. We've actually seen that there's a real benefit to carers, if it's facilitated properly, of enabling them to share their expertise. And that has a clear positive impact on the carers who are doing the sharing as well as those who are receiving. Secondly, automation. And that might sound horrid. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that our Trustpilot reviews from carers say that we're really kind, we offer hope, support, and community. So automation doesn't mean that we don't have human contact, but it might mean that we focus that human contact. So classic example might be instead of emailing to ask for a link to sign up to an event, we can use some of those online tools to automate that process, and that's really effective. Third, build once, use many times. So IT infrastructure can be expensive. Instead of recreating a new app in every borough of the UK, we're trying to build that tech once and then deploy it around different authorities. Also, really important to mention the carer support team, who are an absolutely fab team that we've drawn from our carer community, and they are able to offer hyper flexible outside working hours, and there's tech that enables us to do that. And finally, data-led. So really carefully monitoring user behaviors to see where are the pinch points, where are there opportunities for us to make this process more straightforward. So there we go, Matthew. And if we could turn to the final slide, please. We've rattled through that. Our email address is there. You've got our website. Please do go and take a look. And if these slides are shared, that link is actually a hyperlink. So you can sign up to an update, which is shared with professionals supporting carers. But there we are. So we have gone through very quickly, but we'd love to spend a bit of time answering questions. And I can see one that's come in from Robert about 65-year-old clients at the beginning of the pandemic and only 10% transitioning to online delivery mode. And one thing I'd say in response to that is that we're always surprised by how many people are online. And that we shouldn't forget that there are lots of people who may not have been accessing our services beforehand who are online. But specifically to that point, Robert, we found that there are some really straightforward things that we can do to design a very straightforward process that doesn't require lots of sign-ins and lots of know-how to be able to reach it, and that can, as Suzanne says, just one-click entry can be really valuable. And that has actually, some of the research that came out showed that people had actually increased their online capability by engaging with the Mobilise service.
Yeah, and I think there's that point that people out in the local community are often buddying up with people to help them get online, to provide equipment and things like that. So sometimes there's barriers to overcome, but sometimes it is personal preference and choice. If you're already going to a face-to-face event, that's what you like. That's why you've chosen it. So actually to then swap that to an online event, those are going to be the hardest people, I think, to transform. It's the people that you've never met before that suddenly start joining events. And actually when you look at that and looking after the people that you're already connected with, but really celebrate, notice and welcome the new people that are now have access to your service, people that couldn't travel that far, people that are unable to leave their loved ones, people that are working. So just, I've got half an hour free to dip into some carer support. I can't spend an afternoon coming to an event. So I think you have to look at what happens to the existing group as well as looking at what happens to new people coming in, because both lots definitely need looking after.
Lisa asks about whether people are able to access these programs in New South Wales. And we are always delighted to welcome any carer from around the world to our website. Lisa, what I would suggest, if you want to engage, so we have a kind of a light touch free offer. And then under contract, we've got a more sophisticated offer for carers. So if you'd like a conversation about what those two different offers look like, please do drop us a line, James or Suzanne, not all one word, at mobiliseonline.co.uk. We'd love to have a chat, see what we can offer.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew, any other questions that you wanted us to take a look at?
One thing that I'm just having a look at some of the questions here from this previous session as well. See the applicable. I noticed that Lisa also wrote "No passwords, please!" exclamation mark.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're all for that. You know, if you imagine, people were very worried about security online, and I think sometimes we can get a little bit over focused on that. We always have a moderator there, so if there's a problem with anyone, we can remove them from the session. But to make it really easy to come in, people, you know, it's a one click. You know, the password is integrated in the link, so it just comes through. But also, if we think back to our community halls, even in some of the, you know, the most exciting places of London, we didn't lock the door. We allowed the doors to be open and let people come in. And so, you know, I think sometimes remembering that is quite important. I don't think we're going to go back to face-to-face delivery behind a locked door. And I think the same applies with online services as well.
And I think a lot of that comes down to accessibility and people feeling comfortable to use the mobile and to use the services, so that even with a password, to know that, you know, they're not overwhelmed by the process of remembering what passwords are and everything.
And we can design tech. So if you've got a cookie and various things, you can make sure that you know who that person is as they're coming in. So you can link that to their existing data, whatever it might be, without necessarily needing a password, which is very powerful.
Wonderful. I'm just having a look. We got a few. If it's any else, I know that Robert also said thank you for mentioning the idea of tech topic, that they're losing Zoom at their organisation and having to replace it with Microsoft Teams, and they're having similar experiences between those that are losing some access to one platform over another, and they'd, you know, rather keep what carers are used to and they're like able to use and access.
Yeah, I mean, we in certain sessions we do need to use Teams where we're running things. The NHS, they're all Teams based. We're running sort of workplace carer support groups, and you know, where you've got to use it, you use it. You just have to plan your session slightly differently and think about how the environment's going to be and how people are used to using Teams and how to make the most of that opportunity. So there are some advantages to it as well, particularly if it's something people are already used to and comfortable with, and the chat that can happen outside of the session and carry on after the session can be really valuable as well for those that didn't make it. It has its benefits.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Suzanne. Thanks very much, James, for both of you. As one person has said in the chat, thank you for getting up so early to join us today. We appreciate you both joining us at the Carers New South Wales Carers Conference. And yeah, we look forward to hearing more about your program that you run.